Alright, I watched two animated movies today. One of them's really good. The other one's really stupid, and we'll get to the stupid one later, but we'll talk about the good one first, because I watched it first. So there was this person I knew, and she told me about Mary and Max, being recommended to her as a comedy, and then she watched it, and it bummed her out, and that kind of made me want to see the film. But for a while, it never really dawned on me to really see it. It was never really mentioned in any like major list. Nobody was talking about it being an amazing movie. But then, one day I just felt like it. It's a stop motion film. There's a lot of gray color in it. It looked depressing, and I thought, why not? I want my soul to be crushed by an animated movie. That should happen once in a while to everybody to get like we should all get knocked down once in a while. So here's the thing. I understand why that particular person that I knew was bummed out by this movie, but well, first of all, it's really good. It's also really dark, but let's talk about the comedy first because the film is really funny, and that actually makes the dark parts more effective. But let's talk about the comedy first. The grotesque designs of these characters are so off-putting. It's when you think of stop-motion animation, there's a lot of off-putting designs. Wallace and Gromit is probably one of the more smoother designs. But when you think of stuff like A Nightmare Before Christmas, a lot of the designs are imaginative, but there's a lot of grotesqueness to it. The humans don't look like human beings. They look like really just deformed mental patients. But in this film, they just go all the way. They don't care what human beings look like. They don't care about the skin texture. They don't care about anything. They just make them look like just clay lumps. And it's strangely funny. Also, the small details in the text, in the background, in the foreground, in anything they're holding on to are genuinely smart because you can easily imagine like the writers in the writing room thinking about what they will write in every single goddamn box, on every single food packaging, on every single sign. They're thinking about how they can make them funny. There's this great scene with this hobo who lives outside Max's apartment, and every time we pass him, there's always something new on his sign. At first, I think it said, like, hugs, 50 cents. And then it said, financial advices, 50 cents. In that way, they keep making the joke new, fresh, and they can still repeat it. They can just use it again and again. The visual image will still be there. It's just that the text can be a new joke every time. Sometimes it just says hugs without the 50 cents. That's much funnier than saying hugs and then 50 cents. And of course, the contrast between the dark sense of reality and the over-the-top descriptions are hilarious. Throughout the film, we see this character named Mary, and she just has this terrible life. Her grandfather dies, her mother dies, her father dies, her husband leaves her because it turns out he's gay. But when you really think about how the film's trying to be somewhat realistic when it comes to how people are portrayed and how loneliness is portrayed, when you contrast that with the over-the-top things that are happening, it's strangely funny in the darkest way possible. So overall, the film's absolutely hilarious, but the film is very sad. It is extremely depressing. The way it depicts small aspects, small details in life makes it all seem really unimportant and sad. The father likes to what the fuck do they call? Fuck, you know how people like kill animals and they like stuff them up and they like put them on the walls and shit. Taxidermy. His father is his hobby is taxidermy. His mother likes to drink sherry. Like, these small details make them more flawed. They make them feel more lower as a human being. They make them feel so pointless that it's depressing. And it's much more depressing because There are people like that in the world. They just live their life. They just do their depressing job. They have this really stupid hobby, but they're so passionate about it. But the fact that they're so passionate about it, and the fact that they're not doing anything to actually enhance their lives outside of doing that little stupid hobby is an extremely depressing idea. And the film does mention it. The great use of the color gray is usually always done in New York. Whenever we go to where Max lives, which is New York, the color gray is so strong that it almost sucks you in. And here's a strange thing. It's not all black and white. So whenever we go to the New York setting, the gray just engulfs everything, but you see little bits of color. When you look at the windows, the light is still yellow. Mary sends Max a pom-pom, so when he puts it on his head and the pom-pom's red, the contrast suddenly happens. So the grayness actually feels real. It doesn't feel black and white. In your head, you understand that this is not a black and white movie, and maybe because of that, the grayness of it makes it all the more depressing. It actually emphasizes it. When you see that little tuft of red on Max's head, everything else feels more depressing. It's like, in Schindler's List, where the little girl's wearing that red dress. Everything else seems much more depressing. The black and white feels more real. And of course, there are inner conflicts here. Max's inner conflict would be, his mental illness brings out the main inner conflict in his character. In this case, he has Asperger's syndrome, something that I feel very lucky to not for not having. But the conflict is that it's the conflict between the fear of confronting what makes you get into your uncomfortable states. So in this case, whenever Mary just asks a very simple, innocent question to Max through her letters, but if you really try to answer that question, you have to get personal. You have to tell this little girl about really adult things, and that really makes Max nervous because, he's got Asperger's syndrome. He doesn't know how to really emote and tell people honestly what he feels, and this makes him nervous because, when you're trying to do something you don't know how to do since you were a kid, that will make anybody panic. And so that's one part of the conflict, but the other part of the conflict is that there's still a solution for his problems, because having a friend, in any case, in any depressing scenario, would help. And in this case, Mary's a friend, but confronting Mary, actually trying to talk to Mary, makes him get into those uncomfortable states. But if he really continues this friendship, it could really help him kind of get out of his depressing state of mind, depressing state of life. So there's this conflict going on with Max, which makes him a much more interesting character. Then there's Mary, and, with Mary, the reason she's interesting is because we see her first as a kid, and really innocent, just this little kid, and she thinks she's ugly. She has this weird birthmark on her forehead. People make fun of her, and her mother tells her she's fat. Her parents are terrible parents, and even as a kid, we see her cry and getting abused and getting embarrassed, and then we see her grow up, and in our mind, we think that everything's gonna be fine, but then she gets divorced, she becomes an alcoholic, she tries to commit fucking suicide, and because we remember what she was like as a kid, and one of the best things about Mary's design is that even as a grown-up, the design is almost the same. It's almost exactly the same. So the progress feels more close. And the progress feels so real. And the progress towards this dark side of adulthood feels so closely related to the childhood of Mary that it hurts more to watch. When we see her trying to commit suicide, it's still the exact same look that she had as a kid. So we in our head, we kind of relate the scene with a child trying to commit suicide. And it becomes so depressing. And it becomes much more depressing because Mary's a genuinely interesting character. Like, she's flawed. She understands she's flawed. But she tries to help Max out. She tries to help herself out. She actually tries to make her life better. and you really root for her, but everything just doesn't go her way. And the last closure of the film kind of brings out the humanity in both of the characters. You know, it still emphasizes loneliness. The film doesn't really go for this really happy-go-lucky ending of, you know, saying, you know, fucking, if you have friends, everything's gonna be okay. They don't go towards that route. They still emphasize that people can be lonely, and maybe to a certain extent, we'll always be lonely, but it balances out with a glimpse of hope. A glimpse of hope of saying there is still good people out there. Is the film too bleak? Which is something that a lot of people are mentioning on like the IMDb threads. Is the film too bleak? Maybe, sort of. I mean, the color schemes probably make it seem too bleak. The deaths are probably way too over the top. There are way too many people dying in this movie, without a genuine sense of consequence. You know, you see Mary being sad, and that's it. With Max, you understand because he has a hard time being sad because, you know, his mental illness. But I think that the extremes, the bleak extremes, in this case, are done much more naturally, much more artistically. It's not just like an in-your-face tearjerker of a movie. It's not trying to grab you by the collar and just force you to cry. No, it's done well, smoothly, and the transitions are effective as all hell. Like I said, with Mary. So, the film's really good. I don't know really what else to say. I don't know much about the production of animation, so I can't really say too much about the technical aspects of it, but I think this film can still be really effective if it was done in the live action setting. I mean, the jokes and the designs would not work as much, but still, I think that's a good sign of a goddamn animated film. Even if it's not animated, it can still be a good movie. 4 out of 4. I'm not really sure what else to say. So, let's fucking talk about the stupid one next. So, yeah, 4 out of 4, Mary and Max is really good. Bye.